So we're going to be looking at classes and then the different types of, I guess, parts of what the class is made up of. If you went over some of the lessons, you'll find that classes have fields, constructors, methods, and a main method. So we're going to have different videos for different parts, but we're going to start with introduction to fields and introduction to methods today, and then we're going to create our own class. So let's go over to IntelliJ, and then in IntelliJ you can create a new project. So go ahead and click create new project and make sure that it is a Java project. And then we'll go to next. It's going to ask you whether you want to create one from a template, and that's okay. It'll give you a main class and then give it a name. In this case I'm going to call mine classes demo. For you, make sure that you place this in a folder where you know you'll be able to find it. Sometimes Idea Projects is a little bit hard to find. If you have your own CS folder for CS projects, make sure to put it there. Otherwise, you can leave it in Idea Projects. And then in the base package, we're going to call this cis.edu. And you do it backwards by convention, so edu.cis, and then we go to finish. So now that we've created our first Java project, when we are going to open up this folder, and then under the sources folder is where we're going to have all of our code. So SRC stands for sources, and then under that we have this other folder called edu.cis, and inside of that we have a main class. So far in Replit, you have been creating code inside of main class that was created for you, but for from now on, we're going to be creating our own classes, and we're not just going to be working in main, we're going to be working in different files. So let's go over an overview of what main sort of does. Main lets you execute code. So anything that you put inside of this main method, Java is going to look for it and it's going to give you some options of running it. So you'll notice here that you have some green buttons on the side. If Java knows that you have a main method, it's going to give you that option to run that main method, and then it's going to execute whatever code is inside of that main method. So if I did something like int age equals 10, and then I wanted to say print that out, I would click on the green button and then run main.main. Class is called main with capital M and then M with lowercase m. And you'll notice that it printed out age down here. Now, as we've seen before, we can create variables with different types. So we have type double, which could be something like a shoe size. We also have type string, which could be something like a name. But let's say that we wanted to create a completely new type. Now in Python, we didn't quite do this very much. And in other classes that we've taken, you probably haven't done this a whole lot. But Java lets you create your own types. So instead of just having to stick to string, double, int, and so on, you can make your own type. So in this case, I'm going to make my own type, and that's going to be type airplane. So if I go type airplane, and you're going to notice that Java is going to be a bit upset at me, and it's going to say, I can't resolve this. I don't know what airplane means. It'd be nice if it just said, I don't know what airplane means, but instead it says cannot resolve symbol airplane, which is a bit cryptic. But that's what that error message means. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our own type of type airplane. If we go over to new, we right click on this folder. If you right click on SRC, it's going to be different than if you clicked on the edu.cis. So make sure you click on edu.cis because we want our class to be in there. And then we're going to go to new and Java class. It's going to ask us what the name of the class is going to be. In this case, I'm going to say that this class is going to be called airplane, and you'll notice that it starts with a capital. So all new types that you create are going to start with a capital. If over here we have the class string with a capital S, somebody created that class and they named it with a capital S. We're going to do the same for a type airplane. You'll notice that the file was created and it's called airplane, and then the class is also called airplane, and then we have a keyword that says class to signify that we are creating our new class. Inside of class, we have a few things. We have fields, We have methods, we have constructor, we have main methods as specified in the lesson. But we're going to go over two things from now, methods and fields only. So fields are properties. So in this case, we're making an airplane. What properties or data is this airplane going to have? And then methods are behaviors. What's this airplane going to be able to do? So if we have fields, we're going to have some properties. A property could be a name. So we can say string name. And this is just a normal variable declaration like you've done before. So our airplane is going to be able to have a name. It's also going to be able to have a model. So if we go string model, we'll be able to give it a model. And then maybe it'll have a serial number. So int serial. And perhaps we want one more thing, which is string make or maker. It could be Boeing, it could be Airbus, so on. So now we have some fields, some properties that this particular type is going to be able to hold data in. If we created different classes, they would hold different fields, and then those fields would hold different types of data. So it depends on your class what the fields are going to be, but generally we put them up at the top. It's the first thing that we put in a class. Then we're going to have methods. Methods is what the airplane is able to do. So let's say an airplane ideally should be able to fly. So we're going to create some methods for this airplane to be able to do a few things. Among them, one of those would be fly. And to be able to specify what I guess an action that this class can do, we say void fly, and then we'll do that. Now, what does this void mean? Void just means that it doesn't return anything. It returns nothing. It just does something. So we're going to look at methods really quickly and sort of what methods do. And to be able to use some of these, we have to make our own variable. Think of this file as the blueprint. So when there's engineers and there's designers, so the designers will create a blueprint with some engineers, sure, but let's say the designers will create a blueprint and say, this is how an airplane should be made. And then the people building the airplane will take that blueprint and actually create instances of those airplanes, so physical airplanes, and they're all going to follow what the blueprint told them to do. So this file is our blueprint. This is not making an actual airplane. It's just the blueprint for the airplane should do. And then over here, we're going to create the actual airplane. And we can create as many airplanes as we want. To be able to do that, we want to say that we want a variable of type airplane. I'm going to call this plane1. So my variable's name is plane1. And then I'm going to create a new airplane. And make sure that you have these two parentheses with nothing inside of them after your keyword. So I've created a new airplane. It's going to be held in a variable called plane1, which is of type airplane. And now I can do things with plane1. I can call methods from it. So if I go plane1 dot fly, plane1 will be able to fly. And I could create more than one. I could create as many as I wanted, but in this case, I'll create two. So I'll go with plane1 and plane2. And plane2 will also fly. Now, interestingly, let's say that we ran this. Let's see what happens. In this case, nothing really happens. The program finishes and it says, I'm done. I've exited without any errors. If I go over to my class definition or my blueprint, I'm going to notice that fly doesn't really do anything. There's nothing inside of it. So maybe I'll just print out a message whenever the plane flies. And I'm going to go and make a sound. Perfect. So now that I go back, both of these planes are going to fly. And when they fly, they are going to execute whatever is inside of the fly method. So I'll click on the play button. And you're going to see that both planes flew. They both did what the fly method says inside of it. Now, there's a few things that we can do with methods. Methods can let us do a variety of things. Um, as long as we specify what we want a method to do, and then we call it from an instance, from an actual plane, then it'll do that. The first thing that we're going to do is that we are going to give the planes a name. So in this case, I could do something like this. Let's say that they both have a name called Planey McPlaneface. What's going to happen here? Well, the planes will always have the name Planey McPlaneface. And then let's say that we created a method that was greet passengers. And in greet passengers, we're just going to print out, hi, my name is, and then the name. Now, if I go back here and I run this, the greeting doesn't happen because I haven't actually called the greeting from the plane. So I'm just going to make plane 1 greet passengers and not fly. And I'm going to make plane 2 fly and greet the passengers. So there's many different places from where you can run the main method. You can also right click on it and go to run. You can click on the green arrows. You can click on this green arrow. You can click on that green arrow. So you're going to notice that three things happened. Plane 1 greeted the passengers. That's correct. Plane 2 flew. And then plane 2 greeted the passengers. But it doesn't make any sense to make all of the planes have the same name. As you can see here, no matter what we are saying in the blueprint, the name is always going to be Planey McPlaneface. Whenever we create a new plane, each plane has its own set of fields. If we give the value right away, then all of the planes will have the same set of fields with the same values that we began with. So we usually don't give the value up at the top like this. All that we do is declare it, and each one of the planes is going to set its own name. If we wanted to set the name, we had to create a method for that. So we'll go void set name. And we will create, or we will give a value to the plane's name through this method. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to say name. So name is this field equals to something. We're going to take in input from user or string from user. You can call it whatever you want. Input name, maybe. And then we will give it that value. So what does this mean? Well, really, we're creating a new variable of type string. And that variable, we're going to use that variable to give name a value. And how do we use this variable? Well, we go over back to our main and say plane1 dot set name, and it's going to expect you to put the input name inside of the parentheses. So we're going to go with Big Boeing plane. So this value is going to be given to this variable, also called a parameter. And this variable is going to be used to give a value to name, which is now this. Now remember that every plane has its own set of fields. So if I set the name for plane 1, but I don't set the name for plane 2 only plane 1 will be able to display something. So let's go ahead and try it out and see what happens here. It says my name is null, my name is null. Well, what happened? Well, we greeted the passengers before we set the name. So let's set the name first, and then we'll greet the passengers. Let's see if that fixes it. That's true. My name is Boeing Plane. So then we come over here and we say plane 2 dot set name, and we'll go with Planey Mug Plain Face. Now let's remember to set the name before we greet. And each one of these planes will now have its own name. So one will have Boeing, one will have Planey McPlaneface. And you can create as many planes of these as you want and then run them in main, and main will run them. What is this method called? This is a specific method called the setter method because it sets a value. In future videos, we're going to go over different types of methods and what they do. But for now, it's important for you to understand that methods can create some action for an object, and that an object can hold its own values. Now, the object declaration is just a blueprint. Each time that we make a new object, all of this gets copied onto the objects, and each one of those objects has its own set of data. So these variables will be created for each one of the planes, and each plane will have its own name variable. If you set the name variable in one plane, it won't affect the name variable in another plane, as we saw with our example over here.